And John Bassett reaches out and he said, look, Billy, we really like Memphis can make it, but Logan's a great guy. He just doesn't have the money. Would you be interested? And really, they go over to the racket club. They play tennis, and Bassett convinces William to go, okay. And he does it because
Today on the Sideline, I'm chatting with the author of the brand new book, The Memphis Showboats, the USFL Team, and the City's Fight for Major League Status. Dr. Keith B. Wood is up next. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports, talking with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that makes the sports world great. Quick reminder, if you have not already subscribed, be sure to go to this show and subscribe now. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Audible, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And it would mean the world to me and my guests if you could take 2 minutes and leave the show a review on Apple or Spotify. To learn more, you can visit our website at 5thqrtpodcast.com. Now grab your iced tea or a coffee, get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. Today on the Sideline, I'm talking with a repeat guest. Memphis has a long and evolving sports history, going back to the 1920s and 40s with the Memphis Red Sox, then into the late 1960s and early 70s when basketball arrived through the ABA, followed by the 1970s push for pro football with the World Football League. By the early 1980s, Memphis was still chasing that major league identity, and that pursuit led to the Memphis Showboats. Today's guest on the Sideline has helped tell much of that Memphis sports history through his previous books, Memphis Hoops, Race and Basketball in the Bluff City, 1968 through 1997, and the Memphis Red Sox, a Negroes League History. Dr. Keith B. Wood is a historian, author, and educator at Christian Brothers High School right here in Memphis. A native of Schenectady, New York, he came to Memphis sight unseen after graduating in 1994 from St. John Fisher College in Rochester to take a job at Sheffield High School. He's been telling the city stories ever since. He's back now with a new book releasing April 1st, The Memphis Showboats, the USFL Team, and the city's fight for Major League Status. Keith, welcome back to the Fifth Quarter.
Oh, Sandy, I appreciate you having me on. I had so much fun last time we were on. I had to come back on. Is this 2 or 3? Which one are we on right now?
This would be number 2. And for anybody, if you want to go back and check out his previous episode, it's episode number 51, and I'll be sure to link that in the show notes as well. Yes, I've been, when we had talked last time, you were working on this book about the Showboats. Right. And I came to Memphis in 1986, so I remember the Showboats. Did I go to a game? I don't think so. But I do remember that. My background is in history as well. And so we've really connected on that. I love how sports and history, especially with the Memphis history, is so connected, where everybody probably thinks about blues and Elvis and basketball. There are so many other aspects to the sports history here in Memphis.
I think, when you talk about sports and history, right? Like my first book was, Memphis Hoops, really about Larry Finch and Coach Verdi Sales. We sat down a number of times. And I think one of the favorite pieces that he talked about was this. He said, Coach, you told the story that I've been trying to tell for years.
Right.
Sports provides a lens into who we are.
Yes.
When we look at the relationships in our city and we start to look at the way that we support our teams, it's an integral piece of who we are. And if you really want to find out about Memphians, then I really think taking a deep dive into one of these stories about sports will help you better understand our city and the one that's adopted us, right? And I definitely feel like an adopted Memphian. You did a really good job pronouncing Schenectady for upstate New York. Very Dutch name, so I'm very proud of you. You did a great job. But this adopted hometown has some great stories, and I think the Showboats is a great way to look at how many Memphians sometimes feel like we're we get treated like we're a minor league city, and this is more of a major city, right? And I think this story is a way for us to look at Memphians' push to really be considered as major league.
No, I agree with that. And if there's one thing, my sister lives in Boston and she's always like, she doesn't understand like everybody's obsession with sports,
Right,
especially here in the city. And I said, it's just such an integral part of the fabric of the city.
right.
The other thing is, when we had you on last time, I was really fascinated about how, when the Red Sox were here, baseball was it. Like
Absolutely.
baseball, and then you talked about how that, that team fell apart and dissolved and then Larry Finch came about,
Right.
and that just kind of had, along with the civil rights movement, had this resurgence or surgence in basketball, right?
Mm. Absolutely. I think, when you think about Larry Finch from Melrose, from Orange
Mhm.
Mound, one of the city's own, and his good
Right.
friend Ronnie Robinson make the decision against what a lot of people in Orange Mound were like, you're really not going to go over there, are you? And make a commitment to the university. And, Gene Bartow comes on board their
Right.
sophomore year, and they make that run in 73 to the NCAA finals. And, people have to remember back then, only the conference champion win. If you finish second, we finish behind Louisville. We don't get in the tournament.
Yeah.
And so we miss out in 72. And then in 73, that great run. And that run really talks about what sports can do, right? Everybody meets
Sure.
in the Mid South Coliseum. And I mean, if you just listen, on social media or, whatever outlet you're plugged into,
Right.
there's a longing to go back to the Mid South
There
Coliseum.
really
Why?
is.
Why? Because that space right on the line between East Memphis and Orange Mound brought us together.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like for 3 hours on a Saturday, we were absolutely positively all in with the Memphis Tigers, right? And so, what Larry Finch does for this town, like right after the assassination of Martin Luther King, is vitally important. And, baseball had been king,
Right.
right? And so now you've got basketball, and the city really becomes a basketball city. But there's a lot of folks in the city that, whoa, before Larry Finch, besides baseball, we were pretty good at football. And this story about football is really one that when you jump into it, you're like, wow, starts to tell a little bit more about the fabric of the city of Memphis.
So let's talk about, that football because I mean, yes, obviously you had the college team, but well, one other thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay,
I think people outside of Memphis don't necessarily understand. A lot of times we're not really considered part of the state of Tennessee. We feel
right,
like a loner out, because we're on the very edge. But I also think that plays into the part about we want to be a major league city as well. We
right,
want to be considered equal to other cities, right? And so we have this, I guess, chip on our shoulders,
right,
you know?
absolutely,
So let's talk about let's talk about the story of football
right.
before the 1980s, before the showboats. Let's talk about how the story of football kind of grew in the city of Memphis.
Well, I think we can piggyback off of that conversation that we started with Larry Finch, right? In the 70s, we had an ABA basketball team, right?
Right.
That they're playing same Coliseum, Mid South
Right.
Coliseum. There's nobody there. But then in the 70s, we had John Bassett, who's a
Mhm.
renegade owner in the World Football League. Toronto kicks him out. Canada kicks him out, said, you can't have a team up there. And he brings his football team to Memphis, right? And so the Memphis Grizzlies, who at some point in time were called the Northmen when they were in Canada, now
And
become
and just so that everybody understands, that's not the NBA team you're talking about.
right. It's not the NBA team, right? As people get confused, they
They
actually were
do.
the Grizzlies that were playing football. Now, the important piece to that football piece is John Bassett was an incredible marketer, right? Think Bill Veeck
Mhm.
in baseball. Like he would do incredible things. Elvis was at every game, right? Isaac
Wow.
Hayes was at every game. After the games, there'd be events down at Graceland, right? Like so, the city stacks Elvis
Yeah.
together, and we signed Larry Zonka, Jim Kick. Like we had dudes. We took three of the best players from the Miami Dolphins' undefeated season, signed them, brought them to Memphis. Now, how big of a city or how big of football fans was the city of Memphis or Memphians, right? And so the answer is it was huge. Like every weekend when the Grizzlies were playing games, you're talking between 45 and 50,000 people in the Liberty Bowl. Whereas the
Wow.
ABA, right next door in the Mid-South Coliseum,
Yeah.
we're lucky to get 1,000, right? So legitimately, one could argue in the 1970s, football, professional football, was much bigger. And in fact, in my book on Memphis hoops, I actually argue that one of the reasons why the city of Memphis and Memphians bought stock in the ABA pros was that if the ABA pros dissolved
Yeah.
in the early 70s, then what would that do for Memphis's chances to land and hold a football team? And so there's a solid argument that many Memphians only supported the ABA just so that we would have a professional team and we could prove we could hold one.
Right.
Now, we only have the World Football League for 2 years. The first year, we're one game in the semifinals away from the World Football League championship. And then in the second year, we're about 6, 7 games in, and the league folds. And so it wasn't as if Memphis failed the World Football League. The World Football League failed
Failed
Memphis.
Memphis.
And so, unfortunately, we're left at the altar once again in the 70s, and we're out looking for another opportunity for a professional football team. And Tampa Bay is coming in the 70s. You've got Seattle, and
Right.
we're trying to figure out how can we, as Memphis, get into this mix, right? And we've got this beautiful stadium behind us, and we're like, this stadium, it's an NFL caliber stadium at the time in the 1970s and early 80s, 60,000 people, right? Like,
Right.
so if you can get 60,000 fans, we're larger than a number of NFL teams, and
Sure.
we are using our success in the World Football League to argue that it's time for the NFL to step up, open its doors, and allow Memphis in the front door.
And what was the NFL like? What was the NFL's reasoning for not giving Memphis a team at that time?
Yeah, I think really Pete Rozelle defended the Shield. Like the NFL to him was his baby, right? Like he was
Right.
going to, you weren't going to get in because by the time you hit the 1970s, and actually definitely by the 80s when the USFL breaks out in 83, TV money is starting to change the nature of
Mm,
professional sports,
yeah.
right? And so Roselle actually moved the NFL headquarters to New York City to be in the middle of the marketing, right? He wants to be
Right.
right there at the center, and he's moving and shaking with ABC. You got Monday Night Football that starts in the 70s, right? You're talking about ABC as Monday Night Football, CBS and NBC have got now contracts and they're competing,
Right.
and that money is getting bigger, right? So as the money gets bigger, Roselle becomes very defensive about who gets to get in. It's not just the old boy network; it's the
Yeah.
old boys that are defending the shield. And is Memphis really worthy to get into that? And for years, Memphis has hosted exhibition games, right? We would
Mm.
have Archie Manning come in, who's an Ole Miss guy. We're like, look, if we'll pack out the Liberty Bowl, and in fact, when New Orleans gets a NFL team, at the same time, New Orleans had exhibition games, and Memphis was putting more fans in the Liberty Bowl than they were putting down in Tulane, down in New Orleans, right? But
Right.
New Orleans gets a little quid pro quo on some antitrust exemption.
Yeah.
And so politically, we just get beat, right? We get beat to the punch.
Right.
And um, what can Memphis and Tennessee offer, right? Because remember, the Titans aren't here. They're still playing in Houston
No.
as the
Yeah.
Oilers. And so, it's really, Memphians keep making the argument that we've got the facilities, we've got the fan base. Why do we keep getting left at the altar? And that's when, the USFL comes into play.
So let's talk about the 1980s and
Right.
just what Memphis was like economically and culturally at that time and how that all happened with the creation of the showboats.
Right. So, really, one of the biggest boosters for the city is actually an Alabama booster, Logan Young, right? And
Okay.
Logan truly believes that Memphis is worthy of an NFL team, and he's trying to find a way to get into the USFL, right? So David Dixon comes up with this league, and it's got an opportunity. It's a little different. It's going to play spring football, and we really didn't jump in '82 when they had the first seasons in '83. We're sort of still on the fringes,
Right.
but John Bassett is in '83. And John Bassett, like we said a minute ago, was the owner of the Memphis Grizzlies in the World Football League. And following the 1983 championship game, which took place out in Denver, Logan Young is out there and John Bassett steps to the plate. Bassett steps up and said, "Look, I was in Memphis. It's a great city, right? The difference between the World Football League and the USFL is this. In the World Football League, I had more money than every other owner, and the league just was doomed to fail."
Sure.
He goes,
Yeah.
"I'm in the USFL, and I'm one of the guys that does, I don't have as much money as a lot of these guys. So this league is going to be salient, it's going to last, and the city of Memphis is going to be a great place." Because when I was there in the '70s, they supported the heck out of football in Memphis. And I think John Bassett should really be given credit for
Right.
Memphis getting an opportunity for the USFL.
So let me ask you this. So the USFL came about. Was it because the owners felt like they were just people that did not get an opportunity from the NFL and they just
Right.
chose to form their own league?
Right. There are a lot of teams and cities. Now, there are a number of places like the Michigan Panthers played in Detroit. You had the Philadelphia Stars that played in
Mhm.
Philadelphia,
Yep.
shared with the Eagles. But there's other cities that just like Memphis, wanted an opportunity to be major league. San Antonio didn't have an NFL
Right.
team. They're going to end up with the Gunslingers. There's
Yeah.
some great names.
There
Uh,
are.
yeah, the Breakers start in Boston, and they're sharing space with the Patriots, but then they move to New Orleans, and they're sharing space with the New Orleans Saints, and then they go to Portland, right?
Yeah.
So there's movement, right? There's some fluidity of teams in the USFL, but here's what they're doing: they're playing football in the spring, and one of the things that's unique is this: American sports fans, you've got football's the fall.
Right.
You've got baseball. Really, it starts with spring, but most fans, are going to watch it summer and then
Yes.
do the fall classic, right? And so in the spring, you've got college basketball. But remember, the NBA in the 1980s isn't the juggernaut that it is today, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The merger just took place with the ABA. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird are sort of creating this. Do you realize that when Dr. J and Magic Johnson played for the NBA championship, it was satellite delayed? It wasn't
Yes.
even live. This is the NBA championship. I mean, we're watching four different NBA games at the same time on ESPN, TBS, TNT. This is not
I
that. And
know.
so here's this space of the spring, and man, Americans love football. Baseball used to be the American pastime. By the 1980s, Pete Rozelle and that Shield have taken football, and no longer is baseball the American pastime. It's football.
Right.
And so, with these ideas, right, we're going to let's create this spring football. Let's create an option that's going to have NFL level players in cities, many of them like Memphis, that have a chip on their shoulder,
Right.
and let's see if we can compete with the NFL. And they do. Like, they sign three consecutive Heisman Trophy winners.
That's
And
crazy.
now the NFL is over there like, well, it's like the World Football League. They're not going to make it. They're going to spend all this money.
Sure. Sure.
Right. What's happened? The players love it. Absolutely
Yeah.
love it, because when the players are signing with the USFL for more money, the NFL only has one choice: put the money on the table,
Right.
watch these guys go to the USFL and make more money, while the NFL slides. And there's really some interesting dynamics between the USFL and the NFL over the 3-year period of time that the USFL exists.
Interesting. So let's talk about Willie Dunavant or William. Sorry, Willie. I
Yeah,
nicknamed him
Billy.
William Dunavant. For those living in Memphis, it is a huge name. The
Oh,
Dunavant,
absolutely.
yeah, Dunavant Enterprises, all that. So let's talk about how did he step in as owner, and how did all of that come about?
Okay, so Billy Donovan, I talked to him, in the common friendly form of Billy
Right.
because Steve Ehrhart was a huge piece in putting this book together. And to refer to Billy in a more familiar term, it's who he was, right? He just wanted to be
Right.
part of that. Billy Donovan had played tennis for years with John
Really?
Bassett. John Bassett, in fact, the Memphis tennis courts would be over right off of oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? Right off of Aaron, and it's the Memphis Tennis Complex was Billy's. He brought Major League Tennis to
Right.
Memphis, right? And he and John were friends, and Logan Young had done the yeoman's work to get the USFL to Memphis.
Hmm.
To be honest, Logan didn't have the money that Billy Donovan is. And so the Donovan enterprises are huge. Um, the shaping of the cotton industry by Donovan
Yes.
Enterprises places him probably, and you would never know it because he was a very humble guy, as probably one of the top 10 to 20 CEOs in the whole country, right? He's got wealth of any of
Right.
the NFL owners, right? He's got the wherewithal to bring Major League Tennis to Memphis. And John Bassett reaches out and said, "Look, Billy, we really like Memphis can make it, but Logan's a great guy. He just doesn't have the money. Would you be interested?" And really, they go over to the racket club. They play tennis, and Bassett convinces William to go, okay. And he does it because Mr. Donovan, I'll be a little more formal now,
Okay.
really believes that Memphis deserves an NFL team. And if the USFL will put us on the map, maybe, just maybe, the success of the USFL will allow the NFL to open its doors. And if that's good for the city, then I'm all
Sure.
in.
Sure.
And I'll tell you what, Mr. Donovan lost a good 12 to $15 million in 1984, the first year we played, and then brings in Steve Ehrhart and says, "What do you need?" So
Right.
here's a guy that loses over $10 million, shrugs it off and goes, "If we're going to be the best team in this league, Steve, give me the best players. Give us a chance to win the whole thing. You tell me what you need. I'll give you the money. You get it done." And really, Bassett opens the door to Donovan, and then Donovan reaches out to Steve Ehrhart, and
Right.
Steve Ehrhart comes in, and now we have first year, sub 500, but man, in '85, that Memphis Showboat team was as good as anything in the USFL. And the marker, Steve Ehrhart and I talk about this. 21 guys on the 1985 roster for the Memphis Showboats,
Hmm.
5 years later, are still in the NFL. Now, if you
That's
think about that,
crazy.
Sandy, the average NFL career is 2.5 years.
Sure. Yeah.
And we had 21 guys that lasted 5 years longer in the NFL.
Right.
Think
You
about
know,
it. That in and of itself tells you what kind of product we had here in
right.
Memphis.
It's interesting listening to you tell that whole story, because this is going to show my age. It was almost like it sounded almost like an episode out of the TV show Dallas,
Mm-hmm.
about them, meeting on the tennis courts to, strike up a deal and that kind of thing. Um, let's talk about Steve Earhart and just
Yeah.
who he is for those that don't know him.
Right. So Steve Ehrhart was originally in when the USFL opened its doors in 1982, comes in as the number two man. Right. So he's in
Right.
New York City, and he is plays a major role in getting Herschel Walker to sign with
Right.
the New Jersey Generals. And in fact, when The New Jersey Generals are kind of up in the air with their ownership. Steve Ehrhart plays a major role in getting Donald Trump on board with the New Jersey Generals and clearing things out with the New Jersey Gaming Commission and just making
Right.
sure everything goes smooth. And so, really, at the end of the '83 season, Steve Ehrhart had opportunities like NFL clubs were like, hey, we'd like you to be our general manager. So there's a lot of different places that Steve Ehrhart could have gone. And
Right.
he takes a trip down to Memphis and he meets Mr. Dunavant and they go down to his farm down in Mississippi. And good old Southern charm from Billy
Yeah.
Dunavant just sells Steve Ehrhart
Sure.
coming to Memphis, who, like us, is going to adopt the city. Because today, the president of the Liberty Bowl is Steve Ehrhart, and its
Yeah.
success really sits on the shoulders of the work that Steve does on a yearly basis to make the Liberty Bowl what it is. And so, we're bringing to Memphis one of the most highly sought after general managers in the
Right.
entire game. And so, I mean, the fact that Steve would call me on the phone, hey, Keith, I read that chapter. That was great. But that didn't really happen that way. I'm going to show you. It might have been this, but I'm not going to say anything. And I was like, Steve, that's awesome. He gave me
Yeah.
some insights into what really shook down. Now, there's some great stories. There's a great story in the book. He's in the box. They're down in Birmingham, and they're in the owner's box. And he's there. Billy Dunavant's there. And the Birmingham Stallions, their coach's box is right next door. And it's going back and forth. And let's just say the calls really aren't going the Showboats' way.
Right.
And the Birmingham guys they're just going crazy. And they walk out in the hallway at halftime, and Billy Dunavant looks at these coaches, right? Who are like NFL, USFL coaches, and goes, if
Right.
you rednecks don't shut the hell up, I'm gonna knock you the hell out. And I was like, oh my gosh, here's our owner. Now, how Memphis is that? Right?
That's
Like,
very Memphis. It's very
absolutely. And Steve was like, Billy got pretty serious for a guy that plays tennis, right? He ramped it up. There's some great stories in there because Billy truly wanted us to win. He cared about the
Yeah.
guys. There's another story in the book where we had gone through a rough spell in '85, lost 3 or 4 games, and then we ended up beating the Baltimore Stars,
Right.
who were the defending USFL champions. And Billy invited the entire team to his farm in Mississippi. And Steve described it. He said, Keith, I want you to imagine 70 grown men at Disney World because Billy brings out like these water ski-doos and all that. So you're seeing like Reggie White
Oh,
alignment on a lake on a ski-doo. And these
okay.
are like, they look like little kids.
That's
And
crazy.
it was nuts. And so, I'm interviewing Walter Lewis, who is the quarterback for the Showboats. And one of the things that he recalled was that day. He said, I can tell you about Mr. Dunavant, and here's how I'm going to tell you. He cared about us as people.
Right.
Absolutely. He goes, there's some other people, maybe, I don't know, maybe not so much. Mr. D, when he brought us to his farm and he gave us the keys and said, hey, you guys won, it's all yours. Enjoy. He
Right.
goes, I can tell you right now, if Mr. D was still alive, I could pick up the phone, talk to him, and he would still take
Sure.
care of me. That, like, you see a lot of owners,
Then
right?
they don't do that.
They don't do that. And
Mm-mm.
so this separates Memphis. And in fact, Steve Ehrhart in our conversations said, Keith, if the USFL doesn't fold, or if the NFL allows us in, uh, Billy Dunavant is one of the top 5 owners, not just in the USFL, in the NFL.
Sure.
And our franchise would have lasted because of the type of man that Billy Dunavant was.
It's interesting looking back on everything and from my perspective, it almost looks like we have the means, we have the passion for professional sports.
Right.
We just don't have the organizations that want to believe in us.
Yeah, finding somebody like Billy Dunavant who cares enough about the city
Yeah,
to lose $12 million and still think that this is going to work, right? And that's $12 million in 1985. I'm not sure what that extrapolates out to
sure.
today, but
I
that's a
don't
big
either,
number.
but it's a very big
Um,
number.
I think recently, the passing of Fred Smith,
Yes.
who's going to stand in his shoes? Like, there's got to be a philanthropist, someone in the city that has the wherewithal that decides that what is it going to take for us? Because one of the things that Billy Donovan talked about, and he sat down with Mayor Rout in the county,
Hmm.
and I think actually it was Mayor Harrington who had just been elected for the first time, and started asking, let's build a dome. All right. So if you're looking at the Liberty Bowl behind me, they
Right.
originally thought about doming the Liberty Bowl, like placing a dome over it, using air conditioning, and using it as a multi-sport venue.
Hmm.
Now that became a little touchy for Memphians because our love affair with the Mid South Coliseum that we've already talked about
That's
is
true.
very strong, and they're
It
like, "Well,
still
hold up."
is. I mean, it's still standing. Nobody's torn it down.
Right. And there's still people that want to, like the soccer folks were talking about taking down the Mid South Coliseum and putting up a soccer field that pays homage. Like, whoa, you're not talking about
No.
desecrating the Coliseum. So Billy actually goes, okay, if we're not going to dome the Liberty Bowl, let's go to Collierville. And he had a plan that would have put a domed stadium out in Collierville.
Wow.
And so very few people know about this, but this is how committed Billy Donovan is to the success of the Memphis Showboats.
Um, so let's talk about, because I mean we could get all into, because I've already got ideas in my head about other stuff. So, but let's talk about the coach. So Pepper Rodgers was brought in as head
Right.
coach. Who?
Pepper Rodgers is the Atlanta Journal Constitution said that
I mean,
we
first,
actually,
what a name! First, what a name,
yeah,
Pepper.
Pepper Rodgers, right? So Pepper Rodgers, the Atlanta Journal Constitution says we actually named our franchise after our coach because Pepper Rodgers is a walking marketing. I mean, he's
Yeah, he is.
for Memphis fans, he's John Calipari of football, right?
Yeah.
He absolutely um, got his success first at Kansas University, slid out to UCLA, was successful at UCLA as a college football coach, is coaches at Georgia Tech. And to tell you who Pepper Rodgers is, Pepper Rodgers rode in on a Harley practice at Tech. And like, he was absolutely a player's coach. Like, guys love to play for Pepper. And for fans, on your show, there's going to be some fans that were in the Liberty Bowl and watched Pepper.
Mhm.
We call those Pepperisms. And what they would do is he would have plays, and you'd be like, where did this come from? But it kept defensive coordinators on the other side. Like, Pepper Rodgers was a big wing T guy at Kansas, UCLA, and Georgia Tech. And
Right.
he goes a little more pro set with the program when he gets to Memphis. And then there really is hanging over his head. He was successful at college, but can he really do the pro game?
Yeah.
And so there's some questions. But he was so charismatic. He absolutely, when the Showboats had a parade on Beale Street, he's front and center grabbing the microphone. Oh, we love you guys. The Showboats take the Dream Girls, the cheerleaders, they go out to the Hickory Ridge Mall. He's there. Like, everywhere the marketing is, Pepper Rodgers is there. He didn't just grab a clipboard, go behind his office door, and work about X's and O's. He worked the city, loved the city, and you're going to see him come back. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the '90s, he's coaching the Mad Dogs, right? So he stays in Memphis. Great guy, and he was a bit of a gunslinger, right? Which fits the motif of this Showboats, right? So
Sure.
I spent some time in the book talking about what was a showboat. It was like this floating entertainment that came down the
Mm,
Mississippi.
it was.
It was wild. Folks were, in spurs, still holstering a gun.
Hmm.
It was this Wild West atmosphere. Memphis has got a little bit of that wild side, right? Like, you don't really want to try a Memphian because it's probably not good for your health.
It's true.
Right. And so this little edge that Pepper brings is, man, it's so Memphis, right? And Memphians just grab on to Pepper and they love him, right? And uh, he's able to really connect with the city in ways as much as Billy Dunavant loves the team, loves the city, and
Right.
puts money into it. Man, Pepper's down on the ground, just a good old blue collar kid that just had a chance to play football at Georgia Tech, and he's doing good, right?
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, the plays. Um, there's a couple of plays that I describe in the book where you would be like, "What's he doing?" He puts in both quarterbacks at the same time. In 1985, nobody did that, right? Like this is so unconventional.
In the same play?
Yep, same play.
It
So
two quarterbacks on the field.
right, so it would be interesting because Mike Kelly would get under center. Walter Lewis would get back in the wing T, and then they would switch and Mike Kelly would go out to a wing, and then Walter Kelly would get under center, and then Derek Crawford, who was the receiver from East High School, we can talk about him in a minute, and what's happening? Like coordinators, like, well, this does not make any sense. What is he doing? You've got a quarterback at a split end, and a receiver's a running back, and you've got a quarterback that ran the wishbone at Alabama, or derivation of it,
Right.
and is a running quarterback. Who do you stop? And those are the types of things that endear Memphians to Pepper Rodgers.
And I would think, you talked about when he came here, people were like wondering if he could play at the professional level or if he
Right.
could coach at the professional level. So I'm guessing he had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He had the
Yeah.
Memphis chip on his shoulder. And I really think, if you think about the current Memphis Grizzlies, right, or you think about the grit and grind Grizzlies, right, with
Yeah.
Mike Conley, Zebo, Gasol, and they're like, Gasol, does Gasol even? And it's Gasol's little brother. Does he even belong in the league? The real Gasol's out in L.A.
Yeah, exactly.
Memphians, and I think for as much as John Morant takes right now, he's got a chip on his shoulder when he came into the
Sure
league.
he does.
I played
Sure
at
he
Murray
does.
State. No one knows me, and I can play. And I think that's what draws Memphians to these guys is the fact that, like the city, they've got a chip on their shoulder, and they're just going to get down and do the work. They're going to get down and dirty, and that's Memphis. That's Larry Finch. That's Ronnie Robinson. Like those guys are, straight from the neighborhood, and you can hang out with them on a weekend and feel like you're, one of the boys. And I think Pepper brings that to Memphis.
Right. Let's talk about some of the players. So
Absolutely.
let's talk about Reggie White because he was,
Oof.
I think, one of the biggest names connected with the Showboats.
Absolutely, right? So Reggie White, we all know Reggie White goes on and ends up playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. They've got his draft.
Where did he go? But where did he go to college? In case
Now, first, before college, he's a Chattanooga kid. Reggie White is a Chattanooga
I
kid.
didn't know that. Okay.
His stepfather was in the military, and he ends up at UT. Now, Reggie actually becomes a minister when he's in high school. So he's, the minister of defense is something that was very appropriate at UT, right?
Sure.
And he becomes one of the most highly sought after defensive ends in the NFL draft. And the fact that we sign him in Memphis is a coup for
Sure
the
it is.
USFL, right? And so his first 2 years of professional football are with the Memphis Showboats, right? And so, to be honest, Sandy, when I was a kid, so let's see, in 1984 and 85, I'm probably 12, 13 years old, to date myself a little bit,
Oh,
right?
I'm much older than
You're
you.
couldn't tell. Um, but as a teenager, I knew two things about Memphis. Actually, three. I knew that Martin Luther King got shot here.
Right.
I knew about Graceland. And as a teenager, I was like, these Showboats are good. I like these guys. Like, I was a big Doug Flutie, Herschel Walker, but I would watch the Showboats and go, that looks fun, right? And you'd see the crowds at the Liberty Bowl. And really, as a kid, that stuck out in my head because Reggie White, he's a grown man playing amongst boys. Like, you can't single team him. You got to double him. And he really grows as a professional here in Memphis in his first 2 years. And, it's kind of interesting when the league folds in '86, the Eagles have his rights. they actually come in and pay Dunavant some money for his contract. And Reggie's like, look, I really don't think the league's going to last. I really would like to go to the NFL. And Mr. Dunavant was like, we can't stop Reggie from
Sure.
chasing his NFL dream if we don't know whether we're going to play or not. And so the owner of the Eagles comes in and goes, Reggie's not that good. I'm like, what? Reggie's not that good.
Wow.
He's the best defensive end you guys ever had in the club's history,
Yeah.
right? And what it speaks to is the fact how the NFL looked down on the USFL. But what Reggie White's talent speaks to is how good the talent was in the USFL. And remember, Reggie White simply tackled Doug Flutie and ended his USFL career. The second time they played the Generals, they're up in New Jersey, and Reggie tackles Doug, and it's over. And Reggie gets up, and people are like, oh, it's a dirty play. No, it's not. Reggie is that strong.
Yeah.
Throws Doug down, and then ends up landing on him. Like, his speed and grace for a man of his size, it's just, and you watch him grow, right? Now, did you know about the sock exchange?
No.
The Memphis Sock Exchange. All right. So Reggie goes to oh my gosh, Lansky's.
Yes, big and tall. Lansky's big and tall.
Right?
Yes.
He goes to Lansky's. They shut the place down. Now Reggie's a rookie. He doesn't know that the team's going to provide socks, T-shirts, all that stuff. And so Lansky's, the guy, sells Reggie on 8 new suits, but 50 pairs of socks.
Wow.
And so he gets to practice, and all the guys are like, Reggie, what the hell are you doing with all these socks, man? And they're like, what the team provides socks? And so here what you have is a really interesting situation. The salesman sort of takes advantage of the young African-American football player who's got money for the first time in his life. So what Pepper Rodgers does is he picks up the phone, calls down to Lansky's and says, look, man, and he actually talks to the Lansky himself.
Yes.
And here's what happened. Like, what can we do with this? And so one of the radio stations, along with Lansky's, buys. Well, first off, they give Reggie his money back, right? They give him for all the socks, right? Give him his money back. He keeps the suits. He needs those. Buys socks and gives it out to the first 20,000 fans at the Liberty Bowl for the next home game. And so if you remember in the 1980s in the NFL, the New York Jets had the New York Sack Exchange. Well, on a play on that, Memphis Showboats now have the Memphis Sock Exchange, and they would take socks and wave them. And what Pepper did was he took a moment where a young black professional football player probably got taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And he taught Reggie how to laugh at himself, but then use that. And the fans, so after the game, he's signing socks. There are people all over Memphis that have socks with Reggie White's name on it.
Yeah.
Now there's a story. That's so Memphis. It's some socks. Seriously.
I know. It is.
And really, in 1985, the second year of the Showboats, we end up getting this running back from Denver. His name is Harry Sidney. And he's coming out the tunnel for the first home game, and he's looking around at his teammates, and he's talking about this when I interviewed him. He said, why is everybody waving socks? It's just become that's Memphis. And Reggie White, fans just attach themselves because, you're sitting in the middle of the Bible Belt. Here's the Minister of Defense. You're not going to hear him cuss. And he's going to probably knock you into next week and, take out Doug Flutie, but then, going to get up and with the love of the Lord, love you, right? This Reggie, he's endearing to Memphis. And, his first 2 years here, that was awesome. Now, did you know about his teammate, Duncan? So there's a kicker. Let me make sure I get his first name right because I don't mess up his name. I don't want to mess that up. Alan Duncan.
Alan Duncan, okay.
So Alan Duncan is a kicker at the University of Tennessee, so he plays with Reggie in college.
Right.
Alan's parents are missionaries. So he and Reggie are great friends from UT.
Sure.
And Allen comes in and he absolutely dominates, right? He's doing a great job kicking extra points, field goals. He goes through a rough spot in 85 and gets released, which is crazy because, if you're a kicker, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
biggest mental game in all of
Sure.
sports, right?
And
Scott
very
Norwood.
important, as you can tell from this past season.
Absolutely, right? So, the biggest name that comes to my mind is Scott Norwood for the Buffalo Bills. Like, how can that sort of
Yeah.
define who you are? But it's interesting. Alan Duncan's going through a rough spot. The Showboats release him, but Steve Ehrhart goes, "Here's the keys to Rhodes College. That's where the Showboats practice.
Right.
Go to our facilities, practice." Well, 2 weeks later, the guy that replaced Duncan is not working out, and he gets to come back, and he kicks the game winner. And
Wow.
so, there's just some great stories of some guys. We need to talk about Derek Crawford. Derek Crawford is absolutely positively one of the best stories for the Showboats, right? So,
Hmm.
Derek Crawford's an East High School graduate. And so he is a dude. He wins a state championship in basketball with East High School.
Right.
He's highly recruited as a college basketball player and a college football player. Decides to stay home and play football for the University of Memphis, actually Memphis State back then.
Right.
And
Right.
so he's playing for Memphis State. And he has a great career at Memphis State. And he is probably second, third round NFL guy. And
Hmm.
he decides to stay and play with the Memphis Showboats. And Crawford becomes the most prolific receiver that the Showboats have. And here's another story about a kid from Memphis, East High School, state champion,
Right.
Memphis State kid. Now he's playing in the USFL, right? And he is absolutely, you could ask anybody that he played with. There's not a single guy on the team that could run faster than Derek Crawford. He absolutely was a burner.
Wow.
Point blank. And he's going to lead the team in receiving yards. And he is absolutely the epitome of a Memphis kid done well, right? And just a great story to follow, right? I think that's another story that your fans, when they get a hold of the book, will absolutely love Derek's story.
Yeah. Well, especially, I love that, he grew up here. He went to East High School, which by the way, that was a school when I got out of college. That's where I wanted to teach, was East High School.
Right.
That is just a beautiful school. Um,
Absolutely.
and then goes to Memphis State and then stays in the city to play pro football. What a great story for that. Let's talk about, as we kind of roll to the end a little bit,
Right.
what started the downfall of the USFL?
Right. So, in 1984, there's a series of owners that start contemplating competing against the NFL head to head in the fall.
Oh, yeah.
And what really happens is they break into two camps. One group of owners, led by John Bassett, thinks that David Dixon's original idea of playing in spring football, that's the move, that's where we want to go.
Sure.
Um, and that's what we want to do. The other side is led by Donald Trump, who totally believes that the USFL can compete head to head with the NFL, right? And so there's a bit of divide, and
Can I ask why he thought that?
yeah, there's a lot. Like there's a book by Jeff Pearlman, who really describes. It's called Football for a Buck, and it's a quality book, but I think Pearlman really was using it more as a political diatribe, sort of an
Yeah.
attack on Trump. What I try to do in my book is really talk about the owner Donald Trump in 1984. What was really he thinking about? And I think Trump in 1984, number one, Trump probably doesn't have as much money as Billy Dunavant in 1984.
No, no, he
Most
does
people
not.
don't know that. He does not have that money. He's on the rise. And in fact, many of his friends would tell you that his success in the USFL actually helped propel his real estate dealings in New York City, right? So, one, in New York City, when you get the back page of the Post, that means you've made it. And Donald Trump tried to be on the back page of the Post as much as possible, right?
Right.
And so this by going and head to head, Trump truly believed that either the NFL would fold and pay the USFL this antitrust lawsuit, or the USFL would fold and allow four teams in, one of those being his New Jersey Generals. And this becomes, and to his credit, that one of the things that I really admire is that he doesn't quit and he doesn't take no for an answer. Like, he truly believed that playing in um, the fall would work. Now, if we go back to Memphis in 1984, Memphians were not a big fan of Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form. And what's really interesting about that is when the Generals come to Memphis, there's an article in the paper, and Donald Trump says, well, I've got Doug Flutie. He's the best athlete in the entire USFL. Cities like Memphis should pay more money for their tickets so they can help pay Doug Flutie's salary. And Memphians were livid. And they were like, this guy from New York, he really thinks we're going to give him money. And there's this whole editorial that just talks about what Donald Trump should do to cover his bills, which really shows you that Memphis has this, I don't want to say it's a small town, but it's not big city New York.
It's
And
not. And it's a small, I call it a small big town.
right. And I've heard people say it's the biggest small town you ever come
Yeah.
to, right? And that's a term of endearment. And that's really what you have going on. And so Dunavant, who's really good friends with John Bassett, but he also thinks that, Trump's got a point. We can make some really good money playing in the fall. And so Dunavant ends up siding with Trump and supporting the lawsuit against that. So the 85 season ends, and from the July of 85 until August of 86, the USFL doesn't play in the spring of 86, and they're all waiting on this court case. And unfortunately for the USFL, the court case was played out in New York City.
Sure.
And Steve Ehrhart and I had a good conversation just the other day when I dropped off his copy of the book. We said, Keith, if that court case takes place downtown at the federal courthouse in Memphis, we win. There's not a shadow of doubt, because we would have looked like the younger brother getting abused by the older NFL, the antitrust exemption, all of that. The NFL would have looked like the bad guy. But what the NFL lawyers did is they said, well, this case is in New York City. How can the USFL be the poor little brother if it's led by Donald Trump, who has all this money and all this marketing? No, that doesn't work. And so the NFL lawyers did a really good job of tanking the case by just arguing that the USFL wasn't being abused. And unfortunately, that led to a decision by the jury where the USFL actually wins. They won $1.
Wow.
So, and according to the law, you could treble that. So the judge did. So the USFL actually won
$3.
And when the USFL won $3, so many of the franchises just couldn't make the 1986 season work. And in fact, when the court case comes out, Trump immediately sells the Generals, cuts ties, and moves on. Billy Dunavant and Steve Ehrhart actually suggested, why don't we just go with 6 teams? Let's still play. But they couldn't get enough support to make that happen.
So is it fair to say that, I look at it and think if you continued to play in the spring, you could have built up more equity, so to speak, and had more success. And then
Absolutely.
maybe 5-10 years down the road, then you go and try to do it in the fall too. But from my standpoint, it looks like the greed and other aspirations is what pushed that lawsuit.
Yeah, I really think, if the lawsuit gets played out in Memphis, we're a small city,
right.
we are being abused by the NFL, who's using their antitrust exemption to demoralize and diminish the value of the USFL. That argument, if you get 12 jurors from the city of Memphis in that jury box.
Sure.
That sells.
Yes.
It didn't sell to 12 jurors in New York City,
No.
right? And so I think, in fact, what's kind of interesting, if you study the NFL, when the NFL actually did a mock trial,
Mm-hmm.
they lost the case, like with losing like millions of dollars.
Right.
And so the NFL didn't think they were going to win this case. And so should the USFL have won the case? I believe so. Could the USFL have been successful in the spring? And I think the answer is absolutely positively. Just like we said, build up equity,
Yes.
keep the fan base. The picture you have and see my background
Which
is
is crazy. It's completely packed.
that is the USFL semifinal game against the Oakland Invaders, which is a great story in and of itself. Bobby Hebert, the quarterback of the Oakland Invaders, says, I played in the NFL after I got out of the USFL. I never was around a more raucous crowd than what I faced in Memphis on that July afternoon. We're there. It proves we are an NFL city. We're there. We've got the ownership. Steve Ehrhart put together the lineup. We got guys like Reggie White. We've got Walter Lewis, Derek Crawford, Harry Sidney. We got dudes. We're loaded. We got the team. The city's behind it. Just look at the picture.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they wanted to test the waters in the fall, and it failed. Like you said, play a couple more years in the spring, and if the USFL keeps getting Heisman Trophy winners and top 10 picks, think about some of the guys in the USFL. Steve Young played for the LA Express.
That's crazy.
Jim Kelly, Buffalo Bills, 4 straight Super Bowls. Houston Gamblers quarterback. Doug Williams left the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, plays with the Outlaws in Oklahoma, right? You're talking Herschel Walker out of Georgia. He's playing with the Generals. You're talking about stacking players.
Amazing players, just not average players.
Yeah, you're not just talking about a guy that did, but they weren't going to make an NFL roster. These guys that would have been starting in the NFL are playing in Memphis at the Liberty Bowl against our showboats in crowds that look like that.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's a great story. I mean, it was fun to write, like absolutely. And all the players that I interviewed absolutely had a great time in Memphis, Tennessee.
And that should be, I was listening to I was reading something about, I guess it was Draymond Green or whatever his name is with the NBA talking about how nobody wants to come to Memphis. I just think those are spoil sports. And if people really see the city, they're going to love the city. All the good, bad, and ugly.
Mark Gasol's here. Powell comes here. Mark stays here. Mark goes to Lausanne and, has a solid high school career, goes over to Spain, gets his game ready and loves it here, right? Like Mike Conley, you talk to Mike Conley, absolutely. Zach Randolph, like here's a guy that everybody threw away, that he's got too many problems, that Memphis was like, come on, grit and grind, buddy. We got you. This is it. And Memphis loved the heck out of Zach Zebo. And Zebo loved him back. Like he's over there paying folks MLG and W bill in the middle of winters when they don't have money. And everybody's like, well, that's the type of guy that smokes too much weed and he's not a good guy. Like all those labels. But think about it, that when we start labeling these guys, isn't that how we as a city are labeled?
Well, sure.
Right.
Exactly.
Like this backwater 2-horse town that can't be major league. In fact, with the Memphis Showboats proves without a shadow of a doubt that we can be major league if you give us a chance, right? The hardest part of the book was writing the epilogue, as far as not finding the information, but just how many times heartbreak keeps coming back, right? Like the CFL comes down, the XFL, you start naming all these leagues and everybody's in and then they're out. And, the psyche of the Memphian is just like, man, what's going to happen the next time, right? And in fact, Sandy, to be honest, I mean, how often do we hear today that the Grizzlies, everybody, you said Draymond, like he's talking about who wants to come to Memphis, which is what a ploy to take our team and put him in Nashville, right? Like what? In fact, that happened. Like Bud Adams brings us Houston Oilers,
Yes.
and they're supposed to be here for 2 years. The Liberty Bowl, I went to the Liberty Bowl to watch a Tiger game, and they had painted the entire railings that Oiler blue. And I was like, oh, this is ugly. That's not what I'm supposed to see. Like, what is this doing here? Like, I don't get it. And I got really good seats, like, right, because no one's going to the games.
Right.
And then Bud Adams gets so mad at Memphis, he picks up the Oilers and moves them to Vanderbilt for a year. Says, "I'll forget Memphis. It's terrible," and wants to know whether we want to go watch an NFL game in Nashville, 3 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it earlier in the podcast. Most people in Tennessee would like to take the city of Memphis, lop it off in the Mississippi River, and maybe float it
Exactly.
down a few miles.
Exactly.
No, this is Memphis. This is who we are, right? This is Memphis, man. I mean, it is what it is. Like,
It is.
you gotta embrace that. And I think for those years, 1984, 1985, Memphis embraced the hell out of itself, embraced football, proved that it was absolutely an NFL level city to the world. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, unfortunately, the USFL folds.
Yeah.
Now what could have been if we weren't? And I think that's the story that this book tells is definitely that.
And I think that that theme right there, what could have been, seems to be something that follows Memphis quite a bit.
Right.
Through every decade, the what could have been thing. So, okay, your book comes out April 1st and for sale, and put it right in front of you. Put
All
the
right.
book right in front of you. No,
Right here.
drop it. Well, there you go. There you go. I'll
Okay.
put a link into the show notes. You can find it on Amazon and where else? Locally in Memphis?
Novel has
Novel.
copies.
Okay.
Oxbow, right off of Poplar, has copies. And
Yes.
love if you're fans, check out my website. It's www.keithbwoodauthor.com. Got a ton of stuff on there, and
Yes, you
great
do.
stuff on the Showboats. In fact, if they missed the conversations about the Red Sox or the Memphis Hoops, those things are there. And man, totally appreciate, Sandy, all the work you do for the city of Memphis. Absolutely, you are one of the biggest boosters that this city has for Tiger
Oh, thank you.
athletics.
Thank
And
you.
then I just when I told you earlier, when I follow your social, I'm encouraged, right? Like, it's an encouraging word, it's uplifting, and I think that's what these stories can do. These stories
Yes.
can uplift Memphis
Hmm.
and remind us that we have meaning, that we are major league, and that we belong in these
Absolutely.
conversations with the big boys. So definitely appreciate your time and your love for sport here in the city of Memphis.
I got 5 flash fire Q&A questions for you, little fun ones. Coffee or tea?
Neither. Actually, Mountain Dew Zero, which is
Ooh,
bad. Yeah,
okay, okay.
it's
I like
bad.
Mountain Dew too. Okay,
Okay.
early bird or night owl?
Early bird because I teach. It's just the
That's
nature of the
right.
beast.
That's right. What athlete would you most like to have a chat with?
Verdell Mathis from the Memphis Red Sox. I got to chat with a lot of the guys in this
Yeah.
Memphis Showboats, but Verdell Mathis is probably one of my heroes after writing that book on the Memphis Red Sox. I'd love to just
Okay.
sit down and talk baseball.
Okay. The most recent movie that you've loved?
Oh my gosh, jeez. This is sad. I spend so much time reading, and I'm working on my next project. Ah, man, I'm going to take a pass on that one.
I just started the movie Sinners just
Okay.
because.
Oh, and in that case, my 26-year-old son who's autistic said I had to go see that with him, and I absolutely will. I'm gonna give you. I'll double down on that. That is
Yeah.
absolutely a great
just
movie.
just the whole filming, like the acting, the music, everything, and I'm halfway through it, so I haven't finished it.
Oh,
Okay, best Memphis food that you like right now?
oh, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, I've got to go with barbecue. Right?
Absolutely.
The city of Memphis, we're hosting the 2026 Jerry Malloy Negro League Conference, and we were talking about the menu. And I was like, if there's not any barbecue on this right here,
Absolutely.
there's got to be some barbecue. There's got to be some greens. Like, there better be some cornbread. Like, I was like, you're going to give folks smaller. They have to get fed when they get down here to
So when is
Memphis.
the conference?
It is June 18th through the 21st. Let me make sure.
Okay.
Double check on that because I'm gonna give you the wrong date and be in trouble.
And what's the name of it again?
It's the Jerry Malloy Negro League Conference,
Okay.
and it's actually June 24th through the 28th.
Okay. Excellent. Who's looking good to win the World Series this year since baseball just started?
Oh, Sandy, it's absolutely, the judge, right? The New York
Oh,
Yankees.
oh, oh, oh.
So a kid from Schenectady, New York, little inside information, who actually has a tattoo of the Yankee symbol on his back.
Oh my God.
So if you know the New York Yankees July 4th hat with the American
Yes.
flag,
Yes.
that's on my shoulder blade. So
Okay.
I always remember where I'm from. So when you ask who's going to win the World Series, that is
The
a very
Yankees, of
simple,
course.
the Yankees. Is there
um,
another option?
my answer is a little controversial. I lived in Houston for 16 years. I when the
You're not going to see
hurricane
the
when the hurricane happened in 2017, I just fell in love. I didn't even like baseball up
oh,
until then. I actually broke up with a guy because he loved baseball.
oh my gosh.
But I fell in love with baseball, and so I still follow the Astros. So it is what
Everybody
it
has a burden to carry, Sandy. We're going to let you go on that one.
I know, right? It's like, why couldn't I? Yeah, it is what it is. So everybody go out and get this book. It's great. Can I ask what your next project is?
Now, this one is actually a project back home in Schenectady, New York. When
Okay.
my Red Sox book came out, my high school basketball coach grabbed me. He said, Woody, there's a Negro League team in Schenectady? And I was like, what am I, 16? Yes, coach, I know there's a Negro League team. Did anybody write a book? I was like, well, there's a book. It's okay. The local historical
Right.
society did it. He goes, that's what you're doing. You're writing the book. And I was like, what am
Yes,
I like
sir.
gonna get line drills? Like I coached high school basketball for 17 years. Like I've got players that are in their 40s, right? And here I am at 50 something, and I'm sitting there listening to him go, okay, Woody, you're gonna write a book. I go, I don't do I have a choice? Um, but yeah, my next project, Sandy, is on the Schenectady Mohawk Giants, which was
Wow.
a Negro League team in 1913, 14, and 15, and then reemerged in 29 and lasted through World War II. So probably about 40,000 words in.
Yeah.
I got 5 or 6 chapters I'm sort of working around.
Sure.
Uh, the summers is my big time as a
Yeah.
teacher, of course, to
Right.
dive in deep.
Right.
I will be going to the Hall of Fame in May to present on the 1913 team.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
so
pretty cool.
cool. I can't wait to see the pictures from that. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And
Thank you for having me.
absolutely. I always love our conversations. So yes, and everybody, I'll put all the links in the show notes. You can find him on the internet. He's on Instagram, he's on LinkedIn, he's on Facebook, he's everywhere. So thank you again, Keith. I so appreciate that.
Not a problem.
And there you have it. That's a wrap for today's show. Thank you all for listening, especially if you've made it all the way to this part of the show. I appreciate all your support. Another reminder to subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. My mantra is like, share, and review. Follow us on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.